So, welcome to today's podcast. I think you guys are in for a huge treat. I love doing these podcasts because I get to learn from so many great people, listen to their experiences, and this is why we do this, so that you can learn from them too and share what it's really like to build a business, invest in real estate, whatever it is that you're looking to do. And today I have a great guest, Gary Wilson. We were just chatting a little bit before we started recording. He's a 30 plus year veteran in the real estate business. He has his own podcast, a massive passive cash flow podcast. I really encourage you to listen to it. Great stuff there. And he's considered an expert in this space. So I'm really grateful to have him come on and share his experience growing up. And I think he started young, right? So people who are older thinking they can't start. Well, he started young at 23 years old after college graduation, built a massive portfolio, and he's a self-made millionaire. It's a tremendous story, and I'm so grateful to have Gary join us today and share his wisdom. So, Gary, welcome to today's show. Really grateful you're here.
Thanks, Tom. Been looking forward to this one, and because the Perennial Pride podcast, it's a great show for everybody listening here. If you're not driving, make sure you get out a piece of paper and pen or pencil. You want to take notes. I love teaching, and I learned if I actually give meat and potatoes, nuts and bolts, things people can actionable steps. It really that's how you help people. We love telling stories, but you got to tell them what to do and show them how to do it, explain why, and then you'll have a lot more success stories. So I'm excited about it. Love it.
Yeah, and that's why you hear so much in this world. We have so much marketing and so much sort of like hype around a lot of these things, but this is where we learn from practical sort of
Mm-hmm.
experience of how it can be done and how to think creatively. And we talked a little bit about too, which we'll hopefully get into in this discussion around how to continue to push forward, right? Because life is hard, it's challenging,
Yeah.
but we have to take action. So Gary, let's start at the beginning here because I'm always fascinated by how people learned about wealth building and investments and such growing up and the influences. So where did it kind of all start with you growing up?
Sure. Well, what's interesting is my upbringing. I had my father's side of the family was fairly well to do. A lot of successful people, business owners, merchants, even farmers. And then on my mother's side, it was all just employees. They teachers, office workers, things like that. They did that, caught in that trap of, work till you're 60 or 65, retire, and enjoy the rest of your life. Well, there wasn't much left of the rest of that life to enjoy, and they're on fixed incomes. It was like a plan to be broke. So I had this crazy
Mm.
programming, and then I go to college, got a degree in computer science. But my freshman year roommate, his name's Socrates. His parents were Greek. His father was a Greek immigrant. And when we graduated, we were just going to go rent like most people. And Sock said, "Nah, I don't think my dad's going to let me do that." I said, "What are you talking about? You're 22 years old now, 23." So he said, "No, my dad wants me to buy a house, and he said he wants me to buy it with you." And I said, "Really? Okay, well let's." My mother was totally afraid. Wait, you just got out of college, you're going to buy a house? What are you doing? So he helped us buy this first house. He didn't give us any money. He didn't give us the fish. He taught us how to fish. So this is January of 1986. That year was one of the biggest updates to the IRS tax code. It was a tax reform act of
Yeah.
1986. It was giant. Took away a lot of loopholes for what we call S types, S employed. It's an actual, like you have an S corp. So really, S means something. It means self-employed. And so we were young guys with our brand new first jobs out of college, in engineering, computer science, and so forth. And so we're making decent money at that time, and we were in a position to pick up some of these properties. So we did. We bought this first house, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and rented out the other 2 bedrooms. And those 2 guys' rents pretty much covered our out of pocket. So we were living. I mean, I can remember I was telling Sock, it only cost me $50 a month to live here. And I got married several years later, and Sock bought me out because it wasn't a good idea for single Sock to be married to be have a house with married Gary. Because there's some possible downsides if the marriage didn't work out and that kind of thing. So, or somebody got sick, whatever. So he bought me out, and I bought another property, and then I moved to Pittsburgh several years later, and I was in the corporate world, and I did not like the corporate world. It just took me a while to have the courage to actually do something about it. So I started investing aggressively when I was 35, and I was able to retire from the corporate world when I was 40 years old. And there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack, but I want to give everybody the basic timeline there and tell you that, every day counts. Every day matters. If you have a vision or the dream to really be independent and be free of the corporate world or whatever your now, if you love your job, don't stay there. I'm not saying leave your job if you love it, but I was not being fulfilled. I felt like I was trapped in a cage. I felt like it was like a prison, and I was just not born to be sitting behind that desk. In any case, that was my big lucky break as far as financial planning goes. It was like, you know what, I'm doing the 401k thing, but I've also got this real estate going on, and man, it pay off. It just kept building up. So Tom, I'm happy to break any of that down you want.
Well, I almost want to step back because here you're coming fresh out of college,
Hmm.
right? You had a great degree. You're going to go work for a job. You're working. I think you were working at the job at the time, right? When you first bought
Hmm.
that property
Yep, first job.
with
Hmm.
Cox. Which first off, I love that he's Socrates. Who's not going to follow that advice? But so Sox was your buddy, right? Your
Hmm.
friend, right? And so
Yep.
you guys, so how did it, so to buy the first property, right? Which is, I think is the hardest because, and maybe because you had some sort of experience around it, but like you had trust in, his father to help guide you. But like,
Hmm.
walk us through what was that process like? Like, what was it, was it difficult? I mean, maybe you could sound, you kind of went through it quickly, but like, how
Yeah.
difficult was that? What was that like?
Well, what's interesting is, I was so young and naive and fresh. It was all so new to me. I didn't even know what questions to ask. I didn't even know or have any instincts to be fearful or afraid or anything. Partly because, yeah, Sock's dad was leading us through the process. But the time where we were in our country was pretty amazing. We'd come through the crazy the 60s with riots and stuff, and the 70s ending Vietnam, and the gas crisis, and the interest rates going up to 18%. And all my input was all negative. It was like, this is the crazy world. Well, then the president at the time was Ronald Reagan, and he really turned the country around. I mean, it just pride, so just for example, in the 1980 Winter Olympics, the American hockey team who were amateurs, had beat the Russians for the first time ever, right? And it wasn't the Gold Cup. The Gold Cup they ended up winning because they beat the Finns. Well, I was there. I was at the 1980 Winter Olympics, and I was at those two games. Now, at the time, I didn't really understand the magnitude of how important that was to our country, but that was a pivotal moment. We'd also gotten our hostages back from Iran in that first year, so we get this new president. All of a sudden, man, America's back on top again and fast. So we just had this like intense drive to succeed and realize the American dream. And again, I knew it was a lucky break, but Sock's dad helped us find that first property. So practically speaking, here's what happened. It was owned by someone in the Navy, so that they had a VA mortgage, and Socrates and I were able to assume that first mortgage, right? And the owner, he had a second mortgage too. Well, we refinanced the second mortgage, and then there was still equity remaining, so we gave another note for the remaining equity. So actually, I had three notes on this house. One to VA,
Wow.
one to a local bank, and one to the prior owner. But when you add it all up, the other two guys' rents were paying for everything. Now, I want to explain something to everybody here. This is something you want to write down, guys. You're going to have a lot of people, particularly realtors, because they don't know. Wonderful people, but they just don't know. They're going to tell you, well, you can't do that anymore. They'll even say things like it's illegal, it's wrong. It's absolutely false. 100% legal, ethical, moral in every way, shape, or form. And most importantly, I've had realtors tell me you haven't been able to assume mortgages in 30 or 40 years. I'm like, that's not true either. You can assume mortgages today. You just have to qualify. See, in those days, Sock and I didn't have to qualify to assume that VA mortgage. It was a one-page piece of paper we signed, and that was it. Well, nowadays, you have to qualify to assume those mortgages, just like you will qualify to get your own brand new mortgage. It's no different. That's the difference. But you can assume USDA mortgages, FHA mortgages, VA mortgages, and a lot of commercial mortgages that are adjustable rate mortgages are also assumable. Now, this is why this is so important right now. If you think about all the properties that were bought in the last since the after the last recession up till about 2 years ago, they had really low interest rates, 3 and 4%. Well, instead of going to buy a house now or a property and get a brand new mortgage at 7%, why not look in us to assume one of those properties that had a 3 or 4% mortgage? Because number one, your payment's going to be lower, and number two is they've already been partially amortized. In other words, more of your payment now is going to be more principal and
Right.
less interest, as opposed to getting a brand new mortgage, right? Now you got to make up the difference because those properties have gone up in value. But the reality is there's ways to make that happen too. You can get private money to make up at least a portion of the remaining equity. Maybe the owner can finance up to 10%, and you can put in 10%, and you can get the rest through a private money. And if you do the blended rate, you're still ahead of the game. Plus, you pay off these other mortgages more quickly. So now you've got this massive amount of equity in a shorter period of time and a very low mortgage payment that's only got maybe 20 years left on it out of the original 30. So this is something that's starting now, guys. It's becoming more and more talked about, and it should be a part of your strategy going forward, whether it's your own home or an investment property. So that's just one thing there. But what I learned from that, Tom, wasn't just the academics of how to identify, negotiate, and get a good deal. It really taught me to have courage, to have faith, to have discipline enough to learn and study. And really, what's really important is to listen to the people who are further ahead than you. If they're 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ahead of you, even 20 years ahead of you, like Sockstad had like 150 something units. I couldn't imagine that at that point. Well, I eventually went way past that in my own portfolio, because once you get going, you also stretch your risk threshold. So your vision is able to expand and grow exponentially just by putting yourself in position to do the due diligence, right? Make good decisions, pick the right properties and take massive action is really what it comes down to. And it's when you learn the rules of the game, it dramatically reduces risk. That's why you want to hang around other people who are doing this and learn from them. And I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in mastermind fees and coaching fees and training fees over the years. You don't have to do like I did, but just sync up with one group, one investor group in your area. Sync up, get it. If you're an agent, if you're a real estate agent, you need to be paying attention here, guys. I'm telling you, if you're not working the investors the right way, if you don't understand the terminology and methodology, you're going to drive them crazy, and they're going to drive you crazy. So learn the methodology, learn the terminology, so you can invest yourself, and then you can walk the walk and talk the talk with the right kind of investors. That's the big dilemma, Tom. In real estate brokerage, a lot of agents don't work with investors because they're frustrated, and they're frustrated because they don't understand. It's just a matter of information and communication. And once you cross that bridge, now you got multiple sources of income. You got your owner occupants that you're helping them buy and sell their own homes. You got investors, and you're in a position to invest yourself. That's three streams of income
Right.
from one set of activities. That's what we call thinking like a Lincoln. You're thinking like a Lincoln. That was a famous saying in our group. So,
Love it. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
There's so much wisdom there because, and I hit on it just to your point, like investing, we talk about here at Perennial Pride too, is, invest in yourself, right? In your education, your networks, because, we've got to be humble to recognize we don't know it all, but we got to start somewhere. And so to your point, getting around those who have experienced it, have more knowledge, and
Hmm.
see what you can do to help them out. That's how I started. I started loaning money to a real estate investor who was way ahead of me,
Yeah.
and being humble and saying, "What can I do to help you?" And he helped me sort of learn things, right, of
Hmm.
how to analyze. And this is the second point is that, and you hit it right on the head. From my perspective, the more you know, it's not so much the risk in the investment, it's in the investor, right? It's
Hmm.
what you know and the knowledge and your network that you're going to reduce the risk. We get so trained that we've got to take massive risk for a high
Hmm.
reward. Well, that's the game they try to teach us, right? Just throw it into, say, Wall Street and don't even know what you're investing in and
Yeah.
hope for the best. Well, I think for people just like Gary's witness of it, the more you learn, the lower risk you have and the higher returns
Yeah.
you can get because you are playing it with a competitive advantage, right? And you know
Yeah.
more. And so I really highly encourage that. That's why you're on this, listening to this podcast, right? To absorb some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, Gary, so how, back to can we start at 23 and eventually left your corporate job at 40. So it wasn't like, overnight, right? It
Yeah.
took time. So after building your, buying your first property, give us some sense of like how that expanded. But like, as you mentioned, it went from one, but were able to acquire so many more units. Like, what was that kind of progression like? And what did you learn along the way?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is being that Socrates and I were both 23-year-old, we had great jobs, making good money, and we had our own property. We thought we were on top of the world. We were kings of the world. We were in Virginia Beach. So this was, it's a fun place to be. So Socrates and I, we went out and bought a boat, and then we bought a big van to pull the boat, and we were having fun and not listening to his dad. I ended up getting married, but fast forward, I ended up moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is the strategy I use. So this is one of those moments, guys, you want to write this down, okay? I call it the stair-step approach. So I would buy a property and actually put down money. I would put down 20%. I actually bought two fourplexes. So I had 8 units right out of the gate. My first purchase at 35 years old. And I was making money right away and I had built in equity, right? And then I went out and bought a threeplex and then a duplex. And essentially in that first year, the year I was 35, I bought 10 properties with an average of 3 units each. So I literally had 30 units by the end of that year. Now I'd used my cash,
Wow.
but what I did is that I took a home equity loan on my personal home, and then I got a personal line of credit. Okay, and I always use lines of credit. So everybody listening, don't get a fixed rate and term loan against your own home. Get a line of credit. So you can use it like a bank. You draw on it, buy a property, pay it back. Draw on it, pay it back. Draw on it, pay it back. So what I did is I bought those 10 properties. Then I took the next year off, okay, so I could pay down those second loans, the secondary loans, the lines of credit. So I did that. The end of the second year, then I had 30 units with all my equity intact, plus I'd raised the value because I fixed them up and raised the rent, so I had more cash flow. What I did was I started having enough cash flow that I could save that and use as a down payment for my next property. So I literally became my own bank. I didn't have to go get money from private lenders or hard money loans, anything like that. And I was able to get really good low interest rate and good terms on my loans from the banks. And I built up to 40 some odd units the third year, and then eventually, within 5 years, I had 70 something units, and I was able to leave my corporate job, and it was the most amazing thing. I built the portfolio up to it was like 72 units, and when I was at 40 something units, I knew me leaving the corporate world was a real high probability. It was just a matter of having the courage to make that leap because I was a corporate vice president. I had 5 weeks vacation, great salary, everything was going great, but I was not being fulfilled. I did not like the corporate world. I wasn't born to be sitting behind a desk like that. So in any case, I left and then I worked really hard the next year because I felt uneasy about leaving my corporate world. That's all I knew. And I'm watching all my neighbors go to work every day, and I'm sitting there on my back deck with a cup of coffee, reading the paper and plotting out my next purchase. So, but in any case, here's what I did. This is another critical moment, so please write this down. I found a lender who underwrote commercial loans. He was a commercial lender, and I told him I had an idea. I wanted to have a blanket mortgage, second lien across all my properties so I could extract all the equity and borrow against it on a commercial line of credit. Okay? And he did it. Now, I've had other people tell me, well, you can't do that because commercial lenders want to be in the first position. Well, I'm telling you, you can do it. You just have to talk to the right people and ask the right questions. So this guy, in addition to being a commercial lender, he was also a private lender, but he actually farmed out he did what's called a participating loan. So he found other investors that backed that loan, underwrote the loan with him. So he wasn't taking all the risk. Well, that was, you might imagine, a good amount of money, quite a lot of money, and I was able to go out and buy the next big property, right, for cash. And then I started doing the Burr method: buy, right, buy low, remodel, rent, refinance. So that's what I did. I bought this a nine unit building, fixed it up, raised the rents, went out, and then got a brand new first mortgage on it, right? Paid back the line of credit. So I had added nine more units. I increased my portfolio by more than 10%. And what do you think that lender did for me on my line of credit? Well, he increased it to include the value of the property I just put in the portfolio. And guys, that's really what I did for several years. I ended up going up to over 250 units. I bought a 90 unit building. I went from 9 units to a 90 unit building. And I could have lived off that one building. So, in any case, that was really the path I took. Very conservative. Along the way, I did a lot of creative purchasing, though. I did, assumable mortgages again, wrap mortgages. You can do subject to. There's lots of things you can do. Land titles, things like that. So the reality is all this is documented. I mean, I'm not the only one who's done these things. I did write eight books. I'm getting ready to write my ninth book. But the sixth book is called Massive Passive Cash Flow Method. Okay, and you can read all about this. The eighth book actually talks about this part of my business career as an entrepreneur, and also goes in what I did next was I built a brokerage company, and I built a title company and a property management company, an appraisal company. I had four different companies, plus I had five holding entities to hold the real estate, and four service businesses all related to real estate, all based on me building that portfolio first. It became the foundation upon which I launched other businesses. Now I run a big team. I was going to launch a brokerage again, but I remember how hard it was to be an independent broker, especially when you get big, because all of a sudden the other big box companies, now they know who you are, and you're a competitor for them, right? And it becomes a lot more difficult. So I decided to build a national team inside of a brokerage that allowed me to operate across multiple states. And now, in a little over 3 years, we're in 38 states. It's amazing. But what we do is we teach our agents how to work with the investors, right? So we teach them everything over the years we've learned on investing, methodology, terminology, and we want them to invest themselves. We don't make it a requirement, but we pretty much they're all either are or will be investors. And then the thing is now they can walk the walk and talk the talk with other investors. And I mean really good investors who are investing in multiple locations, because as a team, we can serve them in all those areas and work together as a unified unit, using the methodologies that they're like. So now we got 8 investors from 13 different countries investing, using us to help them invest in the U.S. So it's an amazing, it was a
That's
philosophy I
incredible.
had and a vision I had years ago about a national team, and we're actually living it. It's amazing. So the eighth book, I had 8 of my team members each write a chapter, and I wrote the main body of it, and I had them write their own experience. And it's an amazing book. And by the way, if anybody does purchase it, obviously we're grateful for that. But we take all the proceeds. We make no profit on the book at all. Nobody gets paid. Everybody volunteers, and all that money goes to the Healing House Foundation. So we're able to provide, financial resources for those in need of housing, which is a lot right now in the U.S. We're 7 million housing units short in the country right now, and a lot of people are homeless. I'm sure you've seen it. So we're able to now use what we've done and kind of come back full circle and help those in need. And it's an amazing thing. So I know I just packed a lot in
Incredible.
there, and I'm happy to share any more details, Tom, if you want.
Yeah, it's incredible because there's so many aspects of that. I know you condensed your story down. That's a lot of years, a lot of learning, right? So, but which I love at the last point, and I was going to bring it up in the conversation anyway, is
Hmm.
people talk about wealth and whatever they think about their perspective. I've come to a realization that it's good if you're doing it in the right way, doing productive things, adding value. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy because then you could do more. right? You
Yeah.
can provide more and impact more. And that's why I love what you're doing with the healing house and other things. But let me get back to, when you started with the sort of, you know, leveraging aspect, right?
Hmm.
Using lines of credit and building up equity, and basically you're evolving that into something that maybe people didn't think was even available to
Hmm.
do, right? To have that second line of credit and such.
Hmm.
We teach a little bit of that here at Perennial Pride, but we use a different tool of life insurance. But regardless, it's a line of credit that you can sort of control and leverage, right?
Yeah.
And that allowed you to expand. And we're really big on leverage in from a dollars perspective, leveraging people's talents and skills. And you did that to build your massive portfolio. So it's really cool to hear how you went about it. But you did it in a conservative way too, because
Hmm.
you said the second year, right? If I heard that correctly, you would pay down and you'd build up the
Hmm.
equity, right? It gives you
Yeah.
some sort of balance to it. It wasn't like you're buying everything zero down, like you can hear about these sort of stories, but you're
Hmm.
doing it in a conservative and controlled manner. Would that be
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah. That's really important. I appreciate you bringing that up. So I did some of those, no down, you don't have to have money, you don't have to have credit, you don't have to have experience kind of deals. But the thing is um, while they can and do work, they're a lot more difficult. They take a lot more time, and there's not as much profit in it. I mean, think about it. If you go to approach an owner and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy a property, and I would like you to own or finance for me," really what you're saying is, I know you don't know me. I'm a complete stranger, and I can't get funding from conventional banking right now, so I have to ask you to fund me to buy your property. How many consumers do you think are going to be agreeable to that? you know, Very, very few. So you're working your butt off, man. I mean, talking about, I've seen people do this, hitting the pavement, knocking on doors, all this stuff. It's grunt work. It's hard. And the mindset though is, I'm coming at this from a position of no money, not using money. And it has a long-term negative impact on your subconscious. This is a fact. People need to be aware of this. But if you come from abundance, where even if you don't have it yet, still every day say affirmations, hang around people who are way ahead of you, right? And you will start to think abundantly and have abundant thoughts and abundant solutions and abundant strategies based in abundance. And one of those is if you always do the low down, no down, no money down kind of stuff, and again, I'm trying to be careful what I say. I'm not trying to criticize or knock those folks. I'm just telling you that is a long, hard way. You may think it's the easy way because you don't have to have cash or credit, but I'm telling you, you're going to have a hard time getting deals. And by the way, if you, when you do that, you're going to pay higher interest rates. Okay, you're also going to have less equity. So if you think about this from a financial analysis point of view, and this is where the smart, really smart people excel, is they don't just study potential profit, what we call the upside potential. They also study the downside risk. And one of the downside risks is of having little equity and little cash flow is when something goes wrong, you're like one water tank away from disaster. You know, if you need a new roof and you're already tapped out and you can't borrow anymore and you don't have enough equity to borrow against to do the roof, you're stuck. And you end up with not so nice properties, and it's a downward spiral. I've seen it firsthand. There's an old saying in real estate: nice properties, nice tenants; bad properties, bad tenants. So if you want to get the good tenants, you got to have the good
Mm.
properties. And taking shortcuts and trying to grow too fast, I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time. I had a really nice mentor one time told me, he said, "Look, you know, anybody that makes it past 7 years is probably going to make it." He said the trick is to get through the first 7 years without any crises or any disasters. And it's extremely difficult to do that. We've had floods, we've had fires, we've had all kinds of things happen. We had a major recession. But because we had really good, solid portfolio with equity and cash flow, we were able to weather those storms. But again, if your cash flow is too tight and you don't have a lot of equity, when the storms hit, those ships sink. This is where people, this part is kind of a personal thing. I've had people tell me, well, because I don't have any skin in the game, I can just jump overboard and swim to shore and let the ship sink. And I'm thinking, what kind of a strategy is that? I'd rather work with people who are like, I
Yeah.
worked my you know what off for this ship. I'm going to keep this ship afloat, the ship afloat, and get it safely in the shore. Those people succeed. And by the way, lenders look for that type of character. Lenders don't lend to people that give up and quit and let the ship sink. Lenders lend to people that make sure no matter what, that ship makes it to shore. Valuable lesson in life and in business, guys. I'm telling you, just know that and talk to really good lenders, and they'll tell you, anybody can make money in an up market. They look at what happens in a down market, right? And if you can make it, you'll never have a problem borrowing money for as long as you live.
No, it's just massively great wisdom. It's something that the few things you sort of said there that really resonate. One is the bad property, bad tenant. I've experienced that side of the
Hmm.
fence, and it sounds great on paper, right? Higher cash flow, but you can potentially pay for it in the end. Um, and then the other part is, which I think I think we probably share this, I believe, based on what you're saying, is, you got to play offense and defense, right?
Hmm.
Wealth building is just not one side, just like any sports team, right? It's hard to win if you just are one dimensional.
Hmm.
For our wealth building for long term is to think about the defensive side, right? Can you
Hmm.
withstand shocks in the system? Because you've seen it, Gary, firsthand throughout the years of investing. Like, it's never always going to be one direction, and
Hmm.
we got to be prepared. And that's why, having equity, good cash flow, reserves, whatever, to be able to withstand the shocks. And we're in this for the long haul, so it's
Yeah.
tremendously valuable wisdom. We can get so short-sighted and sort of
Hmm.
short-term thinking, and that's the problem, right? Because
Yeah.
it sounds all great on paper, but when you're dealing with some stuff that you don't expect, who can withstand it, right?
Yeah.
That's the true investor, right? To be able to do with that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, so let me step back for a second, because for all the success you had, and you kind of knew this was a path, and you found it along the way. But for people who are maybe kind of scratching the itch to maybe start a business, or even get into real estate investing, like, what would you share with them to help them kind of step one and two to kind of get going here?
Yeah. Well, first thing is this is one of our philosophies on our team is it's a formula, and it starts with one of the variables is education. You have to have the right education. Align yourself with the right people. There are people out there that have sales based machines. They're teaching from the stage, and you first thing is it's like a $300 weekend, and then they're selling you something that's like $3,000, and then you need coaching. That's now it's like $50,000. You know, some of those guys I know personally, and they have good material, right? But what I'd focus on, this is what I learned to do, is focus on the platforms that are education based. Yeah, you're going to have to invest some money. You just like you invest money in a college education, but align yourself with the people that focus on education first. Education is primary. So that's the first part of the formula. The second part is the right information. And the cool thing about the right education is it shows you how to get and use the right information, right? So we have lots of
Mm.
websites on our team that we can go and we can analyze anything we want about any property, any person, anywhere in the country. In fact, the team members on our team, they all get their own individual account. They have their own account on this. It's like a lead gen system that's amazing. So we have the education plus the information. The third variable is the right action. Now, when you have the right education and you have the right information, you're far more likely to take right action. When you have those three variables in place, the fourth result is the right result. So the right education plus the right information plus the right action equals the right results. That's how you do it. And I know it's philosophical, but think about how that applies to you in your life and act accordingly. Just keep that in mind. Keep that mantra in your mind. I'm not opposed to investing in your education. Lord knows I've invested a lot in mine, but I learned the difference between people who have a sales-based platform versus an education-based platform, and go with the latter every time. It might not be as exciting, might be more boring, but it's right. You can't go wrong. You can never learn too much.
No, I'm humbled each day of talking to folks like you and others who are have such unique expertise and
Mm-hmm.
experiences that you could try. You're never going to learn it all anyway.
Yep.
So might as well, be humble enough to absorb it, connect with folks like you and others who paved the path and
Hmm.
sort of take some action, right? When you're ready. So,
Yeah.
really, I really appreciate all of this great information, Gary. I think this is wonderful. And, I know you're serving clients across the country with your investor agents, right, that are helping people secure. So how best for the folks who are maybe interested in learning more about how they reach out to you?
Well, really, where we are in the economy right now, it's really important to not panic but prepare, right? So it's I've been through this before. This is my fifth market cycle. So while all the parameters may be different, the fundamentals are always exactly the same, you know. So fundamentally speaking, we know we're heading to a recession. We just can't tell you when. So what I tell people to do is to prepare. If you know it's a high probability, don't panic. You're going to waste time and energy. Prepare for it. So if you're listening and you're a real estate agent, the last recession, half the agents left the business in the first 3 years of the recession, just gone. You don't have to be one of those people. Be one of the agents. We call it, they're hybrid agents or investor agents, where you know how to work with the
Mm.
investor. So that's what our team does. I have a class every Monday night. I open it up to the entire population. You don't have to sign anything or buy anything or join anything. Just come to class. It's called Monday Night Live, every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. In order to find out how to go there, go visit globalinvestoragent.com, globalinvestoragent.com. And in there, you'll see there's a place you can register to be in class. And even if you don't make it, you'll get the recording the next day. So Beverly's really good about that kind of stuff. Again, there's low barriers to entry. There's nothing, doesn't cost anything. You get to meet people, you get to ask questions. That just start there. If you want to learn more about the team, there's places to do that on that website too. You can, get a call with me if you want. And it's not something we interview everybody. The only real test that we have is not like you don't have to be an expert. Is what you're looking to accomplish and your level of ambition. Because if you know what you want and you're ambitious, we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you how to invest so you can work with investors. And by the way, our investors that we work with, they don't pay for all that training and stuff. We actually teach them. And then the way that we get paid is through the commissions. And it's an average of 4 transactions per investor per agent. So much better than a national average. So sorry for the long answer. I just want to let people understand why this is a great thing for you to do, to just go to that website and go from there, so.
That's awesome. We'll definitely put that in the show notes and all the links and such, and people can easily find that and learn more. I see so much education you provide already on your sites, and so it's definitely a good spot for people to get started to learn more and
Yeah.
see if it's a good fit. So, but Gary, I really appreciate it,
Hmm.
all your wisdom and sharing your experiences along the way. I know our listeners will get tremendous value out of this, and I know we have much more to talk about. So we'll definitely have you come back for another visit and share more of your wisdom. So this is really great. So I appreciate your time and all your experience and wisdom you shared. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.